Not surprised now.
Okay. Good evening for the meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And to get things started, I want to ask Gary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we have an ambitious agenda ahead of us tonight, but I think we can count on us making progress and actually getting something done. The first item is, and by the way, I thank all the members for showing up this evening. It's very important that as many of us that make up a quorum shows up at each and every meeting, because implementation does require action, and we've got to keep the ball moving. It's the last time we met, just to summarize, would you like to summarize basically the process, Anna, that we're going to follow for the implementation?
Well, I think I can, so please let me know if it's anything different. So what we discussed last time is that we were going to be approaching the 67 recommendations on a project basis, and also that we were going to look to work with the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen, as well as all of the other committees that might have a specific relationship to the recommendation that we're working on. Trying to work all together.
That's a pretty good summary, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with this. All right, so this allows us to turn to B, which is what I mean by discussion of programs and tasks recommended in the master plan. It's basically looking at what's in the master plan, and we are going to try to come to a selection decision about anywhere between 3, as many as 5, maybe 6, perhaps 2 big, 3 small, 3 small, 2 small, 3 big, whatever the committee in its infinite wisdom decides would work best. I'd like to just go around the room and see where things stand in your thinking, now that you've had a chance to look at the master plan recommendations that are in the very back foldouts, where the town has made its preferences clearly felt. So this is an important point to keep emphasizing. This is the town's plan. This is what they want done. It's not somebody else's views.
I'm looking at senior housing.
Okay.
I think senior housing is most important, especially given what the planning board is proposing for the fall meeting. I think that's an easy one to kind of start with, because we're going to be working on it and get the master plan implementation committee to go along with us. I think it'd be a great idea.
Okay.
I have a multiple faceted approach here, so I'll try to probably be succinct. I looked at the ones that I thought are precursors to other things as priorities. So number 1, which was the common master plan, which is a precursor to all the stuff in the common. Number 9 and 10 are the zoning and corridor study ones, which are precursors to probably half a dozen other activities. I thought the transportation advisory team one, number 44, which goes to one of the these are all pretty much in sync with the 3 things in the letter that we had. The transportation advisory team one, where we work across departments to identify a game plan as to how we issue these transportation issues, which not just infrastructure, but maybe services, like elderly busing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was one I thought would be a good one. And then the other 4th big one, I would say, is what falls less in the planning category, but more in the, hey, let's do something. And that was number 35, the community center. I heard that comment many times, discussed at the outreach sessions we had, and I do think we've been hearing that a lot at the town meetings, where we talk about we're going to invest in the track, or we're going to invest in the field, and we're going to invest in the fire department, but we always keep hearing we're not doing anything as a community center for the elderly or things like that. And I think it is time we start putting some thought as to a feasibility study or something on those lines. So those are probably the four biggest things. And then in the low-hanging fruit category, I looked at things that, there were very few items that had that were in the 1 to 3 year time window, were minimal effort, and were high priority.
It's tough.
There were 3.
Go ahead.
We did already one, we established this committee. So the other 2, just if you're curious, was number 39, which I think it goes to what Mark was referring to, the update the over 55 housing bylaw, which I think, sounds like the planning board is working towards. And the other one was number 60, which was evaluate the recommendations of the upcoming town hall space needs study and determine the next steps. So let's, if I had to pick a low-hanging fruit ones, I would say let's use those as a low-hanging fruit.
Can I call you even though you just stepped in a
Yeah,
little bit?
I can pick up on the thread. Yeah,
Okay,
it sounds
let me
like I
make
missed Mark. but-
Senior housing, that's what.
Okay, all right, but I did hear what, most of what Gary had to say. And by the way, I already did my job on the way up. I went through the finance committee meeting, and I said, I'm going upstairs to figure out ways to spend money. And they said, okay, get back to us.
Yeah, I told him it was not their money, sorry. Yeah, please.
Following a similar exercise, then I guess maybe for drama purposes, I'll start with the low-hanging fruit, and it mirrors somewhat what I heard Gary say. Obviously, item 46, the MPIC. Hey, we're here. We done that. I noticed too, as a trend going through the items, that you kind of, at least I found it necessary to pair up a couple of items because they naturally are together. So 35 and 60, which were both the space needs study and the community center / senior center thing. That since that project, or at least the study, is already underway, and we had a little bit of an update on it last night. Not from the consultant, but from one of the board members at the selectmen meeting. I think that's getting that behind us is very much of an achievable goal in the short term. Similarly, I thought some of the items in 21 and 22, which had to do with two seemingly not necessarily related topics, but I see they have a common thread there. One is the trails connections, and the other is the connections from neighborhoods to schools. Are coming up with a plan to address those seem like a pretty reasonable thing we could do in the short term. 23, open space criteria, just primarily because I know that the selectmen have already established that as one of our goals, and Chase Gerbig and myself have been assigned to work with Conservation Commission and other players on working on that, knowing that's already risen to the top of our personal goals on the Board of Selectmen. That I think that's something we could probably do too. And I would think similarly, and maybe Jonathan can speak to this, the historic inventory, 53 was an item I thought, if all it required was a little money for consultant work, maybe we could do that in the short term too.
Well, that actually is already underway. The town voted CPA funds for that, and we're
And
just
is that sufficient to finish the project, or?
well,
Can we hold?
Okay,
But I'm just gonna say,
Got it.
whether we're
I was
there,
addressed,
whether we're there or not, it's a place we can get to, I would think, in the short term rather than the long term. Now, as far as the big items, I just had three areas of focus from my mind, and I hadn't thought this in advance until I looked at the list. I was amazed at how much they reflected the actual work we had already done on the master plan, because items 1 through 8 all reflect the common area, and I think dealing with that comprehensively, taking the underway sewer project, which is underway, and not letting it get too far ahead of the troops, and getting in all the other aspects that we need to have included: zoning, parking, infrastructure, etc. I think that's the most important thing we can do, and it's both a short-term and a long-term need. personally. Secondarily, it comes up as item 10, but also has a component in item 18. In my mind, the farm corridor it's obviously going to be a long-term project and has to be handled delicately because, people's personal properties are involved, and so far, the lessons learned by history are that the people who've done the best job of preserving our farms are the farmers. So, whether we're from the government, we're here to help, is the best message. I'm not sure, but we need to have a dialogue anyways to figure out what's best about that. I think that's, that message resounded from folks, and whether we just leave it to the fates going forward, or whether we, work proactively, I think that needs to be addressed. And third and final topic is and I know this was a initial proposal of Rich Crowley, although it actually appeared earlier in our earlier master plan, was the whole Taylor Street, Foster Street area, whether that's a candidate for a another overlay district. I mean, it comes up as topics either 11 and 12, and arguably item 9 as well. But there's specific issues up there, whether they be outdated properties that could, they need work in order to make them attractive to people, and whether we, do something specific to make them attractive or whatever. That whole corridor needs to be looked at, I think, in its own little microcosm, which would be consistent with the goal of the earlier master plan, which said that we should have a secondary economic center other than the common area, because otherwise you're just making the common a magnet for all activity, and that's not wise from a traffic standpoint and other reasons. So that's my input.
So I have a few. I think that from the ones that might be labeled as high priority and perhaps a little bit less intense would be number 53, the historic inventory, and then going with what has already been talked about, 39, housing, 9 and 10, zoning and corridor study, and number 8, the sewer, because that one was already in process. And I believe that those ladders, isn't the corridor and zoning also part of the Board of Selectmen's goals?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all 3 of those.
Well, actually, a lot, if I didn't mention it at every stop, a number of these items overlap with the selectmen goals, which is
Okay.
good.
Yeah, so,
Mike?
This is great, going towards the end, because I can just say, yeah, that stuff.
Oh, sorry.
Didn't mean to intend it that way, Mike.
I agree with a lot of the big-ticket items, the common master plan, the zoning corridor study, and the community center were things that came out of me. But housing, both in terms of, there is an item on there that seems like it's achievable in the short term, but housing in general, I think, is something that was talked about quite a bit in the master plan process. It's a challenge. I don't know that there are a lot of obvious, easy solutions, but I think we owe it to the community to keep that one at the forefront. And even if we can't get some things done, we'll know why we can't get them done. We'll know what the challenges are. So I think it's worth having the discussion, even if we find out that it's a little frustrating to have that discussion. I appreciate, what Paul said, that I would like that sort of across-the-board idea that we're touching on all of the things at the master plan, even though there are things that we know have a little bit higher priority and are bigger and going to have more of an impact conceivably. Things like the trails connection, the neighborhoods to school, open space criteria, and historic inventory, I think will be meaningful to the whole process, that we always have things like that on there and not let them get sidetracked by the bigger items. So I'm totally supportive of all those things. The farm quarter in Taylor and Foster Street maybe are a little bit less of a priority for me based on the other things like the common master plan and the corridor study and the community center, but are certainly worthwhile. And if it's not now, if they're not on the initial cut, they'd be right behind there.
Mr. Lieber?
Okay, well, I think I'm now the only person on the committee who wasn't on the steering, the previous.
Mark wasn't.
Mark was
Well,
a special place of wisdom.
Well, a special place of being a little hesitant to jump in too fast, because I'm not sure that maybe you've dealt with a lot of these things and I'm not familiar with it. My sort of overall, my sense of something that would be an overall thing that I'd like to see is greater cooperation among all the boards and agencies and so on. Several of you have talked about this already, but I think, a lot of us on different committees work together, work on things that really relate to what other people are doing, and I think if we work together on these, it might work well for everybody's best interest. Last time, Anna particularly brought up as her priorities the common area, which I think everybody agrees is one of the things that we should focus on, and I would agree with that, as well as corridor zoning, or maybe more generally zoning, and transportation. I think those are three of the crucial items. Finally, in terms of several people mentioned the historic inventory, we are proceeding on that through CPA funds that we've gotten. We've been a little slow in getting off on that, but one of our meetings this week is going to hopefully hire a consultant who will work on proceeding with the study, the inventory study. A lot of it's been done already. Whether we'll finish is another question, because as time goes on, more and more buildings get old, and they become historically significant too, even if you thought, gee, that was already in my time, but I'm not so young anymore, so maybe that's beginning to be historic too, and we want to pay some attention to that. So those are things that we will definitely be interested in. It looks like we have a good person. We hope to hire her on Thursday, I guess. It's Thursday, our meeting on Thursday will be an interview, and hopefully hire that. But so I see, for example, with the Common, it seems like there's so many different, interest in that. Economic development, the sewer, which is connected to that, but that also affects things like conservation, historic preservation is part of that too, and traffic, of course, is a very big issue there as well. So that certainly is something where I think all of these different factors do come into play, and I think sort of encouraging the different boards and committees in town to work together is something that I think could be very valuable.
Maren, since you're the town planner, what's on your shopping list or preference list?
Okay, my shopping list, one of the first items, I have to do it by number, a zoning diagnostic. I don't remember exactly which, yeah, okay. And that's kind of the very first step of, before you want to make any policy decisions about land use changes to do, you go through and have a diagnostic done of your current zoning, what are the problem areas, and address those first. And that can be going on kind of in the background as we're moving forward with some of the other items. Let's see, detailed area plan for Littleton Common and Beaver Brook. I would highlight that one. And then after you have the area plan, then you modify the zoning to reflect those plans. And then you go back and you repeat step 2 of a detailed area plan for X part of town, and modify the zoning for that part of town, sequentially. Do the plan, hear what people want, put the zoning in place to reflect that. Taylor Street, commuter rail station area would be one to highlight.
All right, now I want to draw on you again, because as you pointed out, and I think it's well known at the table, that there are a number of things already in flight. And what I asked Maren to do, or Maren stepped forward and wanted to do it, and that is to try to do, and this is a key point about what I'd like our committee in particular to pay attention to, and that is to carefully track all the different, not all, but as many of the significant different threads of activity that are going on by different committees that sometimes don't rise to the level of visibility, even if it's a single sentence somewhere. And it's one of my great concerns that we'll have things I'll call pop-ups. Some pop-ups, if you pardon the expression, are going to turn out to be very valuable because we didn't think of them and they fit in, they may accelerate, they may help. Other pop-ups are, in fact, cut across, could make things worse or not really helpful and not a good use of town resources. So behind our discussion tonight is, I want to do sort of an inventory of where we are on this night, as it were publicly, to get an idea of what things are already in flight, and then establish a custom among ourselves and in contact with the planning board and with the board, the BOS. And also, I want to ask the Board of Selectmen and the planning board to use their good offices, since they have statutory influence and power, to ask the other boards to recognize the fact that, no, we're not trying to run them, we're actually trying to use their talents and their abilities and their very focused interests to help us, to help the town, not us. This is the town's plan. I want to emphasize that this is in service of the town, and to echo Jonathan's sentiment, it's not so much just working together, it's working in the first place, telling us what's going on and trying to adhere or to justify what they're doing in view of the comprehensive view the town took in the master plan. So could you quickly just run over the things that are going on that we think we know about?
Yep, absolutely.
Mara, just a
Yeah.
second, Mr. Chair, did you want to explain what your thoughts are on the prioritized recommendations?
I think I heard practically every one in one form or another, and I don't think we need another head bowing like this. Yes, we're going to keep
Just
moving.
wanted to make sure.
Maren, please.
Okay, so ongoing projects, what I did was, and you have it in outline form in front of you, so I'm not going to read through it. Just the few items that I knew things were ongoing, highlighted those. Littleton Common, planned growth, thriving town. We have projects underway that I've heard of, and that was one of the things that I figured out was I'm not necessarily hearing everything that's going on. It's not being standard practice to gather all the information in one place.
Can I just say, I do know that you folks in the town hall have I don't know how often it happens, a meeting, where everybody shares things that are going on in their departments. I don't know if it's weekly, monthly, whatever it is, but tell me about that, because that seems like the obvious place for people to report in. You could be waving the flag for us, hopefully saying, hey, the Master Plan Implementation Committee wants to know specifically what's going on these fronts.
Right. There are monthly staff meetings. We had one today, and I was able to ask a couple specific questions to get a little more information for this presentation. But, for example, Sustainability Committee, I wouldn't know what your goals for the year are and what action plans you have, so.
By you mean Gary?
Yeah.
So we need to expand that network somehow so that those people aren't out of the loop.
On those
Right,
more
and
advisory
who-
type committees.
Right, and who else are we not capturing?
Entities that have an employee in the house, basically, their interests are presented. But if you're not necessarily so.
Right.
Right, I'm not pointing the finger at you, I'm just trying to identify the reality.
Right.
So that's what we have to conquer, right? That kind of, okay.
Right, so it's two-way, getting the master plan information to everybody, and then getting back from the parties what it is that they're working on.
Comment about that, it can't really be a pull from Maren or anybody else, it's got to be more of push.
Right.
Those committees need to know that, hey, there is a master plan implementation process ongoing. You need to keep us abreast of what you guys are doing that's going to impact that. Obviously, we'll be doing our outreach, but if it's only one way and there's not pushing from them, and we're only pulling, we're going to struggle.
That's a great point, I think, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I think you're right. I mean, these folks were passionate in a lot of cases in advocating for things in the process to date. Now we have a plan. They should be just as passionate and diligent in following up on some of that. So we need to kind of send out a message to, all the affected parties saying, hey, you have an interest, if you have an interest in the master plan, and we all do, then, make it your business to stay involved with us.
I don't know if this is a good place or not to make a pause. It just sounds to me that we're now hearing this around the table. Is this too early to discuss how best to do this, or is this another discussion we should delay?
No, I think we can throw some ideas as to how to do this, and one that comes to my mind is to have a cycle by which we get updates twice a year or something like that from different elements of the town boards, the communities, where they just give us, this one, tonight it's highway department, next one it's planning, next one it's not kind of the ones who represented here, but highway or highway or BPAC or something, whatever. Some of them advise some town members, and just here's what we're thinking, and what are you thinking? What are you doing with regard to the agenda? Because I don't know. That's just throwing that as an idea, a way of just giving us an
If you don't
update.
mind following up on that, I agree with Gary, but I think maybe we also ought to email all the chairs of those committees saying, we're undertaking the process of implementation, and here's where we're starting with it. These are the low-hanging fruit, or the big picture objectives that we're intending to follow. Your committee has already, participated and shown interest at X level. Here's our meeting, show up and talk to us. If you think, you got an item, some of them might come in and persuade us, hey, you forgot about us, we should be, real tough, whatever level of participation they show is good, but I think we need to make that outreach, which I think is kind of what, part of what Mike was saying down there too. I mean, we need to touch base with them, but at a certain level, it's on them, but we need to at least touch base with them. Let them know we're out there and what we're doing.
I like Gary's idea, the idea of an ongoing cycle, so that, it becomes a process that we don't have to remind ourselves is good to take a look at. We can set up a schedule, it happens. That's sort of an ongoing thing. I do like the idea of what Paul just said too. We should initiate some dialogue and then establish some ongoing dialogue.
Right.
And, you say email, but it might be
Well,
better
whatever,
to,
yeah.
we can do an email, but we can also, each of us bite off a couple of committees and go to their meeting and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is our expectation, what do you guys think? We expect to see you a couple times a year, are you guys good for that? And then I would like to let them know, that's a minimum standard, right? Twice a year.
Yep.
We would like to know you can be as aggressive as you want to be in communication with us. We're not gonna make any promises that the more aggressive you are, the more noise you make, you're gonna get more, but that sometimes happens in real life.
Right.
But I think that, setting up designating each of us to go to a couple of meetings with other boards would be a good way to initiate that process.
Any other suggestions? Yes.
Can I ask you a question? I was just thinking, would it be possible to get this in the Excel
Yeah.
format? Because I was thinking, like, for the Community Preservation Committee, if we could pull out all of the details that we would be involved with, we could keep track of them and know, rather than have to thumb through this. But
In fact,
That's a great idea.
yeah, that's a
For
fantastic
everybody.
idea, yeah. Actually, we should make that offer. I don't want to prejudge other committees' interests, but tell them that we can pull out from the foldout the areas of interest.
I've been meaning to try to get this in an editable format, to send to the Sustainability Committee, so when they're working on their agenda for the year, hey, these are some ideas that were brought out there, and I haven't had a chance to do that. So that'd be,
That maybe that's one of the things that we bring with us to those initial meetings, is that subset, and whether it's electronic and or hard copy, but that's part of the dialogue that we have with them that sort of starts the process for each of
Yeah,
those
I think the
groups.
difference is it's a subtle one. In one case, in follow-up with your thing, one's aggressive and one's a little bit more, what do you want to do or what are you doing? I'm not sure the committee wants to be in a position to pluck out of, although some are obvious, pluck out of there and say, here they are.
Right.
I'd like them to take a look and say that.
Because you know what, some of them are clearly delineated by
Sure.
committee,
Yeah.
but others are blurred.
Yeah.
in cross committees,
Yeah.
you know, or cross interests.
So one of the things that is coming to my mind in listening to everybody is that this could very quickly become a lot of communication that we should start documenting. And I'm actually thinking whether it makes sense to take the recommendations that are, as you indicated, take the recommendations that are being worked on and have an online tracking via Excel or some other project management program that you all might have access to, so that when somebody does go to a meeting, we have the availability to look at that. And everybody has an update right there available, rather than trying to figure out, well, you went to that meeting and what happened at that meeting, and so that we're trying to be self-responsible to making sure that whatever is going on with X project is actually available for everybody to see.
Yeah, and I have started thinking about the format of how to report activity on each of these. I want to stay away from and always updating, constantly updating, and stick with the every so often, we provide an update. Just because of the amount of time it would take to be updating every day, every week. But
Along that line, what Maren does with us is she gives us an update of all the other boards that are meeting. So we know, what the selectmen talked about the night before. So maybe once every couple of months, Maren sends a blanket out to everybody and says, this is what the master plan implementation committee is working on. Do you have any interest? Do you want to come before us? Send it out. Just be proactive and start sending it out to them. Like, she keeps us in the loop of everybody now,
That's good.
which probably makes more sense.
That's a good way to do
Yeah,
it.
so we have a number of suggestions on the board or in front of us.
Just want to make more work for you, Maren, that's all.
So I think it's probably reach a point where we ought to, as it were, start maybe tonight picking out, where do we want to start? And from the sound of things, it looks like a good place to start is what you just suggested, Mark. And I propose that we do that as our first step, unless someone has a objection as a start point.
Could you
One of
restate
several
that, restate that again? What-
We should start sending minutes of what we're doing here to all the boards on a regular basis and ask them if they're interested in what our upcoming agenda is to come back. We have somebody before us, we send out to conservation, to the selectmen, to fire department, board of health, whoever's pertinent, we send it out to them and invite them to come back to the planning board if they have any interest in what's going to be before us on that Thursday night. We should start doing that proactively for the future as we start looking at different options. Like if we're picking the common, we start ask the fire department to come in, ask the police department to come in, ask the selectmen to come in to give us what they think so that we're including everybody early on in the process as you go forward. The sooner you let them know about what our agenda for the next couple of months is going to be, the better off you're going to be to get the boards involved. And the best thing to do is to have all the boards that are responsible involved early.
Which brings me full circle to what our discussion really began with, was picking the items.
Well, I
Sorry.
did want to, before we go into that,
Sure.
I think I maybe covered it in the first meeting, but what our fundamental role is something I'm not sure we've fully gathered. Are we an advocacy group?
We are,
Or are we an accountability group, or both? Because I would say accountability means hey, you said you're gonna do this. Hey, don't go, stay on task. Don't go up and do this other thing. You're supposed to be doing this.
yes, we're
But
going to-
also advocating some things, but which is
We can't do one without the other in our particular position. We're
And
trying
that's
to
fine.
get something done. We're going to hold people's feet to the fire as well as encourage them more gently.
If I might,
Please.
in some cases, some committees want to and are able to do it on their own. They might need the prodding from us. In other cases, we might need to do more of a detailed advocacy because it's a complex project and nobody really owns it, and therefore,
Nobody owns it.
we have to, we have to kind of do it. So
Nobody
it's
owns it.
it's more advocacy and it's,
Well, that, I guess a third one would be facilitate, because the other piece might be that it's no buns ball.
Right,
And-
right.
And thus, we're trying to get the people at the table together.
The orphans are always the worst things to handle. We're in charge of the orphans, amongst other things.
Yes.
Right, and one more thing I would add is to celebrate when something does get done.
Right.
Okay, this got done,
Yep.
we check it off and move on.
So let's cycle back with this in mind, because we're going to do all of the three in one way or another, or have the town do it. And again, the credibility and the backing to do this is the town's own plan. This is not something that that somebody, put together. So I'd like to get a consensus now on, if we can, to narrow down, let's say, I want to make it really easy, the two bigs. And we can add a third, but I'd like to start out with one or two big items, the bigger items that have high priority as far as the town is concerned. My sense is that by using the word common, and that probably landed on the spot. I mean, it didn't take that much to see. Is there agreement around the table about that?
I think the precursor on the common is the first one. I mean, other things fall out of that. And so, yes, I think the common is one, but
Yeah, I
I think
just
we
said-
should,
yeah.
it's the master plan for the common, I think.
Okay, you've taken the next step, which is to the to-do list.
Yeah.
And so if the project is the common, if that's the primary one, now we can turn to, how do we do it? What is it we do? And so that's, do we want to do a vote on this, or we agree by affirmation that this is it? Because this is going to be using our time and resources.
Yeah. No, as long as what we're talking about is consistent, that the common is inclusive
Yes.
of all the topics that fall under that,
Yeah.
then I agree with Gary completely. That's what we should be, that's number one.
Okay.
Everybody said that's
Okay,
number one.
okay. Okay, so the common's it, and it seems like the obvious place to start would be, at least for the moment, is a plan in turn for the common. And I would like to, at this point, suggest that we follow the following track and get the discussion going on how to do that. And I'd like to get some sense from the town planning side of things about in what order, given all the items that are in the common, in what order, let's get a first cut as soon as possible, in what order those items, shall we say, what items should be done first, second, third, what items should be done simultaneous. We already have a start. There's already something seriously getting started.
Well, the sewer piece is underway as planning
Yeah.
and on its own, but that shouldn't mean we can't encompass that in a greater planning project.
That's the idea.
Exactly.
And all I'm trying to do is,
Right.
at this moment, is to get a first cut right off the bat.
And I've made that point at the selectmen, and everybody's on board with
Okay.
it, kind of waiting for us to come up and offer the next piece.
Do
Yeah.
it. So what we're after is, just keep in mind that we've got the sewage system, the sewage concept running. What are the other things that are key to that? And on that basis, that we can start thinking about formally what will constitute, what has to go into the master plan, what we're going to ask anybody to do this, whether it's going to be an outside contractor, an inside person, to start detailing it, to make it a living plan.
Well, I would say the first thing is a detailed master plan, as they talked about in here, with all the parties identified in here, with use of a consultant to do that, and that addresses
Right.
all the elements that it has to be in there. I don't think you start going into transportation and talking with the state highway department and other
We're
kind
not
of stuff
talking
until
about
you do that
No,
stuff, until you do that master
I'm
plan.
trying to be very careful here, okay? We have a town planner, okay?
Yeah.
All right? Okay. So all I'm asking here is, with a very short turnaround, is what's the order of marching? And there could be two things going on at once, three things going on at once, but some flow to give us some idea of what our expectations should be for a master plan. Please.
I don't want to interrupt your process of hashing out what the priorities are, the bigger, long-term, most important projects
Right.
and the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
But whatever we decide those are, then I think that procedurally, I would suggest that the next steps are, once we've decided on that, going back to the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and the Finance Committee, and saying, here's, we've met, whatever it is, 3, 4, 5 times by that point, and say, you created us, here's
I see, yeah, okay.
where we're going, here's where we're looking to go, here's what we've identified as the bigger long-term projects, as, reducing the master plan into,
Yeah,
3 bullet
so-
points, and then identifying some small hanging fruit that is achievable, and are you okay with that? I think there's a lot of value in that in a couple levels. One is, we need to have the buy-in of all those entities, number one, and number two.
Paul, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Paul,
okay. I think we
One
need to
doesn't
go-
exclude the other.
No, I didn't suggest that, Mike. I just said
before.
before we leave the impression that we're doing anything on our own, I think we need to create our own
Well,
list of priorities, and then go, as a procedural level, bring it back to those boards and say,
Okay.
this is what we'd like to do.
the way I'd like to see us proceed is not to exclude what you're suggesting at all. All I'm saying is that providing an overview of the order of marching of the major themes that would go into the common is not, shall we say, would require a fair amount of work and thinking. And I just want to make sure that our committee is well underway in at least giving that some thought. That doesn't exclude, we're going to come right back to as soon as, now that Maren knows, or I hope Maren understands what we're getting at from this, we'll come back now, what are the other ones?
Right.
That's,
Well,
Stop.
let's go back to the common for one quick
Sure.
second. While we're on the common, why don't we, since we're going to be transparent with all the other boards that are in this, this is where we want to start. This is number one. Send a letter to the selectmen. What issues do you see that we need to tackle to renovate the common? Come to the planning board. What zoning issues do you see that'll make the common more viable? Go to the conservation. What do you see? Go to the light and water department. What issues do you see the highway department? Then we bring the state in, because state's going to be the last one and the worst one. But since we tell them what we're going to look at first, let's ask their input. Where do you see the problems? Where do you see what we need? What's the end result going to be, and how are we going to get there?
okay, you're talking about the bits and pieces, all the moving parts. And from having been through a number of these kinds of projects, all I can tell you is that the first thing is to become acquainted with, shall we say, the order of marching, and that is how can certain moving parts fit in with the other? What's the order? What's the priority? What do you do first, second, third, and fourth? What can you start on, and what do you have to wait for? And that's the kind of overview.
Well, we can start on that right away, but I think
Yeah.
Paul's 100% right.
No,
You
he
have-
is right.
You have to keep
But
everybody.
they're two separate, yeah.
So in addition-
Mike, I'm in violent agreement with you.
Okay.
Identify the priorities, as you've suggested, as we're doing,
Yeah.
and then go back to the primary boards, which is the selectmen and the planning board, which appointed us. But I would also suggest the finance committee, because I think just political experience has taught me that if you don't address that early on, people are going to say, oh, which it's all pie in the sky, and you're not paying attention to the cause. Get them into the dialogue early. And then, also, I'm in complete agreement with Mike Fontanella's suggestion that we go out and, rather than just expect people to come forward to us, we need to do some,
Proselytizing.
proselytizing, exactly. Appoint a bunch of us to go out and meet with various committees and say, okay, here's what we got back from your, purview, and, how do you want to handle it? This is what we're thinking, et cetera, and do
Okay.
those meetings.
Okay, well, in preparation for the proselytizing, which is obviously a step in all the moving parts, want to move on to the next priority that we want, the next project?
That's my opinion. I'm
No,
just,
I mean, are we ready? Because what I'm hearing is that we're going to be assigning one or more of us to go out to the relevant committees to basically begin telling them about the importance of the Common Project. So what's the second one?
You want a low-hanging fruit?
Low-hanging fruit.
Senior housing is the nice, easy one, because we're going to be pushing it. We're trying to get it on the November for another bylaw for the residents to vote on in November. Help us along the way with that one. That's a nice, easy one. It'll get us started. It'll get you indoctrinated to the project and the process of how we're doing it.
we can have some dialogue on what's,
Exactly.
because I know it's being, it should
haven't
have passed in the
cons-
spring,
right.
it didn't.
We have a
need to
consultant,
refigure that.
right, we have
Right,
a
yeah.
consultant's coming back, and we're gonna rework it and take some of the fears that were expressed at town meeting, hopefully take the boogeyman out of it
Right.
and bring it back. But that would be a nice one that we could tag along with and actually,
Okay. Does that sound like,
it's an easy one, that's a
no,
good point.
it's definitely easy.
I like it.
Easy, it could be, okay.
It'd be easy, yeah.
I think it's already, the wheels are already in motion on that, so that's,
Okay,
there's not much
and I know
to
you,
do on that, really.
all right, anybody
No.
here?
Well, no, we're going to be asking for
I mean,
your
other
input.
than support. other than
Which is
provide-
going to be key,
What?
which is going to be key.
Right, we're going to ask for your input into it, too. We're going to ask you to come to a meeting,
Right.
probably September, October, before we,
We should play more of a role in the fall that didn't get played in the Springtown meeting, that's a, believe me, I've been down that road on a number of projects, you screw up the president, or whatever, it doesn't go the way you thought it was gonna go. And then you figure out afterwards, all right, what should we have done? Yeah.
So basically, just to make this work, that means the committee will see what the consultant is producing and what your deliberations, what you're picking out or including or whatever that you decide.
didn't we, aren't we inviting him to the meeting, or did we already?
Yeah, that's the half-size sheet there. is
Oh,
the-
yeah, you guys
the
invited to, we're having the consultant.
July 20th, Judy Barrett's coming in and working with the planning board and housing subcommittee of the Council on Aging, going through the three bylaw proposals.
It's a little one.
Okay. So that's a meeting that we
Going
should.
over there.
That's on the 20th?
Yes,
Okay. So although we have a representative from our committee on the committee.
It wouldn't hurt to sit in the audience and,
That's what I was coming to. So who
Right.
would like to, who among us would like to co-attend?
I'll go.
Yeah.
thank you, Mark, appreciate it.
Planes and trains, okay.
Another meeting next week? Is there another meeting that you?
We have a meeting next week and then one on the 20th, yes. This week.
All the DEP officials are coming out.
No, next week.
On the 19th, it's a morning meeting, including the regional head of DEP. They're all excited about our sewer project, so that, if anyone wants to go to that, I extend that invitation. But,
Another plug for this, okay.
Right,
Here we
right, why
go.
not? Yeah.
Yep, okay. So, is there anyone who would like to pledge to attend the meeting of the planning board when the new revised targeted housing plan is presented?
Well, it's going to be discussed, it's not going to be presented.
Let's
That's
just be
just-
discussed, okay.
That's all right,
I'm definitely interested, and I think we should all be in,
Yeah, I mean, okay.
I'm planning on going, it's gonna be a game time decision logistically with my family and
Okay, got
getting
it.
one kid from
Yeah.
one
I'll
spot.
try to
to
make
another.
it.
Commitment, so I can't be.
Okay, well, I'll make it my business to go, to make sure everyone else goes, so that we'll do it that way. Okay.
As
Okay,
long as someone reminds us.
okay,
Got it.
all right, okay, fair enough. Okay, so we have one simple, low-hanging one, and one fairly large one that we barely touched on. Do we want to also nominate a second small one from the proposed discussed list?
Well, I'm only going to use the simple matrix that I used before, which was immediate, low effort, and high priority, and that was the space study, which was, I know nothing about this other than what I read in here, so I'm not like an advocate for it in terms of its, I have a vested interest in it, it's just that it seemed like there was a recommendation of the upcoming town hall space needs study and determine the next steps. I don't know where that stands.
Consultant's been hired and is off the ground. Selectman DeCoste and Knox gave us a little bit of an update last night, so I think.
That one's also already tracking and moving.
Exactly,
So-
so all the more reason to to get ourselves into the loop on that, because it's happening, and it affects a lot of other things, so that, people so far are very impressed with this fellow's work. I haven't met him yet, so I'm no more in the loop than anybody else is on this, but.
Is this purely relating this building and space needs study, or is it regarding town offices in general?
That's the question I wanted to ask, too.
Well, I think it's specific to this building, but it does extend to people
Council.
whose, what's that?
Does extend to Council on Aging and School Department.
Yeah, people who might
offices.
be moving out of here or have interests outside of here, which would be, prospectively library, council on aging, schools, correct? Yeah, yeah.
So if they're going to evaluate if Council on Aging would want to leave, they would also evaluate the potential landing spot for them?
That's,
Well, and put any group in.
Yes,
into
and
that
I'm asking,
equation,
right, that's fine,
Right.
but the answer is yes?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
But
alternatives
the bigger
to
question, yes, is,
spaces.
should we be meeting with this person? Yes.
Because, you know,
Then it's not so much a low-hanging fruit, I think.
right.
Well, it's happening right now, that's why it's low hanging fruit, it's already ongoing.
But I think that it is ongoing, it is, in the sense of the planning study for this particular building, it's somewhat lowish hanging fruit, but it does expand beyond the borders and encompasses some of the issues that we said we would like to see, i.e. the community center.
Right.
It flows out, can conceivably flow out of it, so I
It's an
think it's
important
worth.
place to put down the marker for
Right.
anything in the master plan that relates to those terms. You know,
Right.
so that it does, if we don't speak up, then it happens without our
us.
input.
Right.
And, it may come out fine, but, since it mirrors so much of what we see in here, we definitely should have a role in that, so.
Okay, so, but in terms of low-hanging fruit, okay, in terms of it actually turning around and resulting in an activity that actually has an outcome, has several steps beyond, many steps beyond. Okay, so without prejudice, I'm just going to put this one at the moment.
No, Michael, I'll make the argument that it's low hanging because it's already happening. We just need to inject ourselves into it to make sure that we're in the dialogue.
Okay, well, I'm not taking it off. All I'm
Yeah.
looking for is a second suggestion. Maybe they're too low-hanging to think about. That's all.
Why not?
Okay, so I'd like to know if there's other low-hanging.
Well, as some people have said before, the recommendation for the historical commission to
Exactly.
to survey the historical properties, or continue the survey, we've done 2 parts of it already long ago, that is is about to happen.
Right.
And we've already got the money from the CPA, and we're about to hire the consultant to do it, so in terms of low-hanging fruit, that certainly is,
Sure, and all we would require at that end is being involved in what's going on, who you're hiring, what are they gonna do, and where does that leave us, right? I mean, and what are the next steps likely out of it, right?
yeah.
Right, right.
I
And
want to raise this question right now, because in the Historic Commission's work, I'm connecting it, maybe perhaps prematurely, to the common. And I'm going to raise the question of whether or not this survey and analysis includes what we'll call the broad area called the common. In other words, are we going to learn about the historic status, I'll put it that way, historic value of those regions in particular?
Actually, we have done several surveys, or we, meaning the Historical
Yeah.
Commission. I was not on it at the time, but the Historical Commission has had a consultant do a previous survey which encompassed the common. And there's quite a good analysis of the history of the common and its, as a whole, and then individual buildings on the common, and individual building structures and cemetery and so forth on the, near and on the common itself. So that aspect has been done already.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this is a matter of implementation. I did a quick tour of a number of towns that have, I'll call it historic commons, and try to understand how they did it. And so one of the questions I have, because I don't know, what are the plus minuses of having an historic, shall we say, area in a place like the Common? Is it a plus or minus for the revitalization? And we're not there yet. We're not at the point where this can be made, but if we have already the information in hand about the historic value of the Common and its environs, why not put it to use for the other purpose? So this is why this particular project has a very positive, could have, but the question is, what are the plus minuses of using it in particular to, as it were, do overlays, other kinds of zoning stuff? Mark, do you have any comment on that, just out of curiosity?
We've got a lot of stuff that's been done a long time ago by Nancy Bradbury, still sitting in the old library, well,
Yeah.
what was the old library? So we could probably start there. I know you've talked before about the the historic district. We did have a bylaw 10 years ago that they tried to float, make it the historic district, and it didn't pass, but there has been a lot of... What?
Your memory, as with so many of us, it was a lot more than,
Was it more than 10 years ago?
it was 20.
Oh, no.
Oh, Mark.
10, 21.
Plus or minus a decade.
We did try to do it.
It was
and-
95, actually.
Was it really?
Yes.
No, all I'm addressing here,
Yeah.
not trying to track, is I'm not getting ahead, all I want to know is plus,
We
minus.
did look at it, maybe it's time to look at it again.
That's all.
But there is a lot of information
There is
still.
there is a lot of information.
There is a lot.
Okay, so I'm trying to get it into some sort of context for its use. Okay.
So going back to, is it low-hanging fruit?
Is
It
it
sounds
low-hanging
like
fruit?
it-
The answer seems to be,
Yes.
or
We're gonna look at the comment, it's
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
part of it.
Or at least the
Ties in
PC
really
question,
well.
yeah.
Is it?
Is it low-hanging fruit in that there is already a lot in?
Oh, in that sense, yes. That information is all available. You could look it up on the web right now.
Yeah, but the purpose here is to use it for the
Yes.
benefit of the town, and not
And to
just,
keep moving
not have it
forward.
like master plan stuck on a shelf somewhere, okay? Can we
It's
deploy
not
it?
stuck on a shelf. I'm looking at it right now.
I'm sorry?
It's not stuck on a shelf. I'm looking at it
Yeah,
right now.
no, well, we're trying to keep it there. Okay, any other low-hanging fruit? Mike, do you have one? Just out of curiosity.
No, I'm fine with where we're going right now.
I had one that's not, I want to call it, maybe we need a stepladder to get to it, but it's not maybe low-hanging, but I do think it's something that we should be looking at, figuring out in the first year. And maybe you could decide if it's
Sure.
off the top, out of the chute, or a little bit later. And that is, it goes to what we're trying to do with this master plan in the first place. And it's item 59, which is establish mechanisms and policies that link the implementation of the master plan to the work plans, budgets, and capital projects. It kind of goes to the accountability piece and having people come in and things like that. We got to figure out how we're going to, I'm looking for the verb, but basically constitutionalize following the master plan. You know, kind of like bring it into the lifeblood, that this is, you have to keep going back to mama and to see, you know, that your plan, what you're doing on an annual basis.
And keeping it
is
consistent with the
with-
existing
plan.
bylaws and state laws.
And so there may be a cycle within the town's calendar, which maybe make it more amenable to figuring this out. I don't necessarily know that, I'm still kind of new to town government here, but I'd like to put that on the table somewhere, that we need to figure that out, how we're gonna do that.
I would-
Yeah.
Number 59?
Yeah, I would suggest that one way to do that is to include the master plan in the discussion of the budgeting process. The annual budget process starts in the fall, goes all the way through to spring town meeting.
Well, I think one of the.
You said it was 59, because I think 9 kind of hits on that too, doesn't it?
So Gary, the Board of Selectmen, they're working on the long-range plan in terms of being able to articulate where within the next 10 years, because the long-range plan is 10 years, where do different things fit? Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
I just want to keep a tether between what each department does and have it go back and say, where does that fit in the master plan? Where is your, and vice versa. If you're trying to, you know, where's something we identified, that was identified as a priority, when are you going to plan to get to that? So I kind of just want to keep a connection, and it not be a connection just through the influence and personal persuasion of us, but more that it just becomes, it's built into the process.
But see, that's why you have to bring the boards in right away when you start with it, because supposing, let's make up a scenario, supposing we decide we want more open space, and we want the selectmen to start purchasing every available piece of open space. Well, if we suggest that to them and don't bring them into it and discuss priorities or which ones are, you're gonna go nowhere, because you're not gonna have a consensus, you're not gonna have,
You have to
it's
have
like.
a- You have to have a funding plan
It's like
and buy-in.
this
everything.
board will be forcing the issue, whereas
Sort of.
adversarially, as opposed to bringing them, everybody on. I mean, I know that's a weird suggestion, but it's better to have everybody on the same page when you try to institute some sort of change that we haven't done before.
And I think that's the case when you get to the eaches, when you get to a particular issue and those kind of things. I'm just talking about more of a process by which, more of a general process by which there's, goes to the accountability piece. How do we build in the accountability of each individual boards to the master plan
It still goes back to
charter?
that. You have to bring them in. If you're gonna,
For
if
sure.
you're gonna be treading on their area, if you're gonna be, I'll use the planning board again. If you're gonna be making suggestions to the planning board, you're better off if you bring us in earlier and we all work together on something that makes more sense than, all of a sudden, this is what we
It's the only
found.
way
this is
things
what-
are gonna happen
Right.
ultimately. I mean, fortunately, we enjoy the support of both the planning board and the selectmen. At this point, I suggest we extend that to getting the finance committee's buy-in as well. But that's why I said earlier, the sooner we settle on some digestible goals, which you're in the
doing
process of doing, bring them back to those boards and say, here's our first whack at it, and we'd like to do these things. Is that okay with you? Yep, okay, or no, then we'll find out.
So I actually really like that idea, and I know that we hadn't talked about number 59 as being one of the ones that we wanted to focus on for the immediate future, but I think it's really critical because the foundation of getting any of these projects done is clearly the resources, the financial and the people.
Personnel
So,
resources.
thank you for bringing that up. I think, I would advocate that we put that on our list.
Resource.
Yeah.
So, okay, so how do we want to, in what way is the best way to communicate this, not only with ourselves, but also to the, shall we say, accompanying boards, if that's what we're
Get
going
on
to do?
their agendas. Soon as we set up our list of identified topics, get on their agendas and say, here's where we're at. We've met X number of times over the
No, I
past 2
understand,
months.
we're taking it to a component, if I understand what you're getting at, Gary, and I think what you're mentioning is, early on, the question has to come up of financial and personnel resources to do it. Going outside, going inside, having the warrant reflect the raising of the capital necessary to execute. There's preparation in
I'll
that.
say this, yeah, we don't know the details yet on
Yes,
that,
right.
but getting it on the radar screen earlier rather than later is wise. But at this point, if we were to walk in and say we want X number of dollars and
No.
X number of employees, there's no justification for that at this point.
I-
Just to identify that there will be a cost, and there's gonna be some issues,
Right.
and
I'm-
pointing it out ourselves rather than have someone else point it out to us
Right.
is the right way to go about it.
All I want to do is establish a pathway
Right.
whereby both to, I hate to use Bonnie's name without a president, be able to approach both Bonnie and Keith on the issue of town finances, and also talk to the various, especially the Board of Selectmen, especially the Planning Board, about, shall we say, the resources that are going to be associated with it.
I've mentioned
period.
before the Finance Committee too. They're
Yeah,
meeting,
that's
they're
agreed.
meeting downstairs tonight. They're aware of the master plan process. They've been supportive. They're charged with being long-term in their thinking, and we should,
They're on my
well,
list.
would be well advised to go.
Maybe what Paul and I should do on a regular basis then is the minutes of this should be sent for our meetings, and then we will give an update to each of our boards every time we meet about where we're at and what we're doing, because we'll have the minutes in front
That
of us.
part's easy, yeah.
that's the
an
easy part.
Yeah, I mean,
But for this particular item we just talked about, Mayor, I mean, it seems like the cycle might be the best thing, is we get on the agenda when there's budget meetings happening, or someone represents, someone here attends, or.
Yeah.
Summer's a great time to do it because the committees do meet, but the agendas are light. Maybe not so much for the planning board, but for the selectmen and the finance committee, they are.
I'll be more than happy to.
See how, just
visit
basically
the
see how
Finance
best
Committee.
how best this element gets played into those particular boards, and see what they think as to what might be a process.
Exactly, because you'll want to tie in with the boards and committees, and then you'll also want to tie in with staff, and
Right.
All right, so.
kind of parallel.
Let's return back to making sure that the tasks or the particular priorities or programs that we're targeting, so when we go to these various boards, we have, as, something of substance to discuss with them that about which we're serious. So we've got the common as, and the whole framework of doing a common master plan is on the list. The Historic Commission is an example of a lower fruit. The anticipated change in housing to make it more targeted. What else is on the list? I'm sure I missed something.
Town study.
I'm sorry?
And whole space study.
The town space study, okay. Another, almost a low-hanging fruit. Is there anything else large? Is transportation far enough along so that we can talk about it as something of interest, or is that something that's too early and too big?
I'd like to take a bite on the transportation one, because this one is near and dear to my heart. And that is, to me, the transportation issues that we have in this town are very much respective of the fact that no one has the ball. We have highway department who maintains the current roads, but no one, in planning has, planning does their piece with regards to developments and things like that, but we we have elements like the bus route for elder services, and that's it's less a transportation issue than an elder services issue, but it really shouldn't be. It really should be a transportation issue, because when we think of transportation, we always think infrastructure, but it's not just infrastructure. You can address something by doing something with a shuttle service sometimes,
Service routes.
or whatever,
Yeah.
without having to necessarily like build a road. So what I wanted to do with this particular item was, let's create a board that links the pieces of the town that relate to these elements. And it's really mostly gonna be town administrator, highway department, and I think I'd like to get the BPAC folks in there, because so they get a place at the table. And start a dialogue with those folks to talk about all those, there's about half a dozen transportation-related elements. They were 15, 21, 22, 34.
yeah.
But if we start with 44, it's how do we get to those elements that we want to get to? But if we do this board, then that could potentially be a jumping off point to figure out how we do the trail system, how we do some of these services, et cetera. So I see this as I see it as a precursor item, and I don't think that piece, just getting this board, shouldn't be that hard to get that discussion going, and so that someone some entity, if not a person, an entity, this group, has the ball to advocate and work these issues.
It is my understanding that there is some, I wouldn't call it pilot study, but an initial effort to do things in town that's underway.
The there are in eaches, the Crosstown Connect is in eaches, there's, EPAC tries to do something with trails.
Yeah.
Rick Finley is an amazing advocate person who just, on his own personal energy, is trying to do a bunch of trail connections.
Keith mostly does it himself, and then we need to kind of break that out so that everybody who has a real interest in it has say in it. I mean, I agree with you, Gary. I think we should, it's a low-hanging fruit item in that it's achievable. You pointed to what, 44 is the corresponding item on that? I think it also, matches up somewhat with the 21.
Create a transportation
Yeah.
advisory team to coordinate on transportation issues across departments, and across
That-
transportation modes.
There you go, because a lot of the issues that are transportation-related won't get done well unless we do that first, right?
That's my.
Yeah, so I would agree with Gary
Okay,
on that.
so let's find a mechanism. What is the mechanism for doing that?
Easy, bring it to the selectmen, and they ask for participation. We could either make a proposal or appoint a committee. I mean, that's what the master plan calls for. It's not hard to do. Giving it its charge and the makeup of the committee is not hard to do.
I see mostly existing boards.
There you go.
As
It's
opposed to.
coordinating existing efforts largely, right? Yeah.
Would you be willing, Gary, to put together, shall we say, the brief that would be presented to the Board of Selectmen to do that?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
Share it with us, but.
Share it
yeah.
with all the members, we can all do the input and make it work. That's a great idea. Is that agreeable to other members?
Yeah.
Okay. That'll get that started.
Yeah, appointing committees is the easiest thing we do.
But we're doing it.
I want to be morbid, but I was just assigned the authority Monday night, Cindy Nappy, and I was going through all the established committees, deciding which ones were going to do acts, you know?
Hey, let us, keep us apprised of that as well. We certainly don't want to interfere with that activity.
This is not one of them. It's just things that get appointed, and then nobody remembers to disengage them, years later.
But we have something ongoing, in flight, if I'm not mistaken, that was somewhere on your list of transportation, right, Mary?
Yes, number 15.
This was the number, let's see, I'm sorry. Under Thriving Town, yeah, it was number 15, and I believe that one is already in flight. So, Gary, you have stuff to work with.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Crosstown Connect, but again, this is mostly town administrator who's been really working that.
Right.
Yeah, but
that issue.
There hasn't really been anybody else's.
Yeah, and all we're doing is taking a step, as Paul's pointing out, to basically make it a more formal town thing and not just administrator activity.
I was at the meeting last month or two, and it was talking about the parking at the commuter rail station. That's a perfect thing, for not just those individual parties to look at, but
There should be community input to that, and there hasn't been. I mean, some things have been done well. A lot of things have been done well. We're getting grants, that sort of thing. But the missing piece, you're correct, is we haven't had a whole lot of coordinated public input. I agree.
Do you, if it,
Okay, I'll push back on that a little bit. But
Okay.
we have had the opportunity to weigh in on, we're not only looking for parking spaces, we also need the sidewalk and the bicycle trail connections.
Who's had opportunity for input?
I have.
Okay, well, that's kind of my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
It's, the public hasn't necessarily, I mean, in-house it has, sure.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And
Right.
and hopefully I know enough to take some of these issues to the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know I'm falling into the forum trap, but is this topic worth having a town-wide, or basically something modeled on what we did when we were in the master plan of bringing in the public and having an event
Sure.
where transportation, the issue is.
In all its glory ugliness,
Yes,
for us, sure, why
exactly.
not?
I think I might be jumping ahead there. Let's
Yeah.
let's take steps. There's a lot of input we already have from the last year.
Right.
At all the different forums to hear about
You
transportation
just
issues and stuff. like
outed
that.
yourself as chairman of the
No, no, I'm
prospective committee.
oh, yeah, I'm just saying,
congratulations.
there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff in the archives of this master plan that already
Yes,
talks
yes,
about
yes.
this. I think we got already good consensus and information already. So my sensing is like, okay, let's just actually start doing stuff.
That's why we're the implementation committee. yeah.
And I'll be making a recommendation as chairman
Right,
of who
right.
should head it. So
Of course,
good.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, I think that comment goes towards a lot of these, so even going back to the first one around the common, there was so much that was developed around that it's a really good starting point, yeah.
Okay, so we have quite a number, I think, that we've done tonight.
We're up to 6. Yeah.
Okay, I think this ought to be, this is about much as I don't want to overextend, sometimes what appears to be less is more.
Right. But if I could, if where you're at, if you're comfortable, Mr. Chairman, with where we're at with the identified list of
Yeah.
immediate priorities,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind including the other items that everybody brought up as what's on the radar screen as next items, because you
Yes.
may walk in a
Yes.
meeting and find somebody says, hey, what about this? I thought this was important,
Okay.
and it's like, yes, it is, and we've talked about that, and that's in round B, when we get to, post fall town.
I don't want to get ahead of you guys, because.
No,
yes,
I'm just saying, as a political thing, we don't want to,
No, I don't want to get ahead of the board tonight in
Yeah.
saying that, okay, first of all, we have to agree on what's actually
Yeah.
on our 2 and 3, our small and large, that we can succinctly present to the relevant boards. The second step would be, if we're all agreed to the first part, is that the other items mentioned, every single one of them, stand next. Not necessarily lower priority, but next,
there's somewhere, yeah, right in the next round, yep.
okay? That require further discussion, but are still have high priority and will be paid due attention. Is there anything else that you'd like to plunge into at this point?
Well, I think, I'm sorry to add one, but
To
in
which-
terms
to
of,
which
but in
list?
terms of, I think, where are we with the zoning and the element? Because I thought that was like step 1, Maren, that you thought needed to be done, with the zoning evaluation.
Item 9? did I put
Yeah.
this?
Right, zoning diagnostic, we'll have to request funding to get started on that.
Is that something that's being
Planning
planned right
board.
now?
I would suggest the planning board take the lead on that and hire a consultant for that zoning diagnostic.
Can somebody explain the technical term there? I'm not familiar with what exactly zoning diagnostic means.
Zoning diagnostic, consultant goes through our zoning bylaws and identifies areas that clearly don't work. Either they're illegal or outdated, or we're not even going as far as whether or not they reflect what we want in the master plan. It's just the very first steps.
Okay, before we go ahead and do the zoning process, we have, as a committee, best way to put it is that in view of the fact that certain elements have an impact on just about everything we do, and because of what's going to be going on in the common and what may go on in other areas, the issue of zoning cuts across so many different kinds of areas. And therefore, and I want to get some sense of what we're going, that if we do have to hire, or do go to, if the town has to go to hire help in reviewing this, the context of that review is beyond, shall we say, the scope of, not the scope, but beyond what generally is the purview of the planning committee. It basically covers the master plan, and it's our committee that's basically, as it were, trying to, as it were, push the master plan along as the town wants. So I'm going to turn now to the planning board and ask the question, is the diagnostic, shall we say, universal enough so that the selection of a consultant, the decision to have a consultant and to hire one should be jointly done or singularly done by this committee? With understanding clearly that it's still the purview, it has to be the purview of the planning board, you say yea or nay to what goes.
Well, I think since the planning board did all the zoning and did all the bylaws and everything else, it's probably more their purview. I mean, I'm speaking probably because I'm on the board, but I think maybe if we get the consultant that we're using right now to have her, she's very good at that.
Okay.
We can probably kill two
Good at
birds.
what?
Wait, hold a second, wait, hold it, before we,
Doing diagnostics on it?
Okay, maybe, I'm just asking a question.
okay, wait. This, I'm addressing a different
Well,
issue
I
here.
still say it's the planning board's purview.
Which is, on planning issues,
Well, it's also on whether or not their zoning is efficient or adequate or anything else like that, since it's their bylaws. You're asking another
but
board.
the master plan, just as a base document, cuts across, just, it isn't simply zoning, bylaw issues. It's a lot of things. It's public infrastructure, it's parking areas, it's things that, require public investment. It's not just zoning.
Right, but that's why you pick a zoning diagnostic to start. You're not making any of the land use decisions in this process. You're just highlighting, these are the problems with the bylaw, and these are the recommended solutions. Just for.
Just to get back to
that
our
simple-
baseline.
Just get that
All right,
exactly,
so if
baseline.
we're going back to something simple where the issue is exclusively the purview of the planning board, then sure, the planning board can
Right.
be there. But not all the issues we're dealing with are exclusively the purview of the
No,
planning
No,
board.
no
It's
question
just
about it.
establishing the
This
baseline.
gets us the very first step.
Yeah.
Okay, this very first step, though, has a different character now. The environment is different. I want to emphasize this. I think we're missing the drift here, okay? What this group has to deal with are the implications, plus and minus, of whatever goes forward for the master plan. It's now become very obvious that zoning, not the zoning changes themselves, but the implication of a zoning change has to be understood by our group so that we can intelligently interact with all the other boards, including conservation, including historic, and all the rest. In other words, I'm not thinking of this in terms of shall we say, turf. I'm thinking of more in terms of utilizing information, utilizing a resource, the way we might use, that is, the committee of which you are a member for the town, I'm only pointing to you because you have dual talents in this, is, very frankly, what are the implications of changing, what are the implications of our current zoning? In what direction do they change? I'm not talking about the technical detail of where they intersect, on the geography. I'm talking about where it intersects for how people live and how people do business and how things are moved. So that's one of the reasons I would like the appointment. I'm looking to you to make the selection and appointment, the whole bidding process, to be a joint one.
Well, if I can make it a proposal, because I
Sure.
think we might be talking past each other a little bit.
Okay.
My understanding, and Maren, I defer to you as the authority on all things of this
Actually,
ilk.
yeah.
But
She's older, he's
Okay,
older.
So he's telling me, he's saying that too, and that is, the zoning assessment or audit is step one. That just gets us back to where we don't have, it
We don't have the
reestablishes the
legal
baseline, it gets
pieces
rid of the
of
old stuff and it's not dealing with what the zoning in the future should be to address the elements that are in the master plan. That's really number 10 on here, which is modify zoning to implement the plan, in effect. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about doing the first thing, which is the audit, and to make recommendations to get us current. So let's have the planning board take that ball. We got enough balls. Let's have them take that ball for the sake of the zoning audit. And then when we get to the next piece, which is, implementation of zoning changes to reflect what we heard from in the planning development, master plan development, I think then that's a fair comment to say that it's a joint element.
Here's where I think that action requires a somewhat different point of view, and I'm going to try to persuade the rest of you to see it this way. And that is, put it very simply, okay, it's not I disagree with that analysis, it's just, that's like, we can't, I'd like to see us do business slightly differently in the following sense. There's a reason why we have the zoning that we have now. There's a reason for that, okay? Whatever the reasons are, that diagnostic will reveal it. That diagnostic will reveal what was the thinking, what was this intended to do, did it do it, didn't do it, why does it have to be diagnosed? Why do we have to get the assessment made? Because we're looking for change. Our group here is responsible for change. So all I'm suggesting is that the selection of the consultant, not the running the day-to-day, not the technical engineering detail of what the zoning change should be, what it was before in the detail, but the implications of it, I think that kind of quality has to be given. That kind of quality work has to be given to us. And I'd like to see us find that in a consultant, if we don't have it in the house already. And that's why I'm looking for the opportunity to do this jointly. Not necessarily to take it over, but to do it jointly. That is the selection of the consultant, so the consultant can also speak to our questions, which are going to be different than the planning boards.
But we're talking about, we call them tools in the toolbox. That's when we discuss zoning bylaws and things like that, tools in the toolbox. All the consultant's going to do is look in that toolbox and see what tools we have in there and how they address the different layers of zoning that we have currently. It's a snapshot. It's like right now. I understand you want to talk about changing this and doing that and everything else. That's entirely different than the tools that we have right now. That consultant's going to tell us, okay, you need to do this, you need to change this. As of right now, you're legal doing this, your open space bylaw works, it's legal, it's this. You're over 55, obviously needs to be.
If that's the extent of it, and if that's what you implied, and if that's what is it, 59?
Number 9.
9, oh, that was back to 9, I thought we were back.
No,
Okay,
number 9.
if that's the case, then fine, let's see something in writing, and we, if the
prescriptive.
planning board's gonna go forward on it, then fine. Just do that as a first step, but I think all the dialogue ensuing about the rest of stuff, everything new, is very valid. We don't necessarily.
You know what, I'm going to flip-flop on you. I'm going to take the other side right now.
Yeah.
The planning board thinks all our bylaws are fine and everything else. The ones that we've already addressed are the ones we're addressing right now. If you want to assess, as a board, how our bylaws are and where the inadequacies of them, then you should hire a consultant to do it. How's that?
Well,
Okay, wait, okay.
look,
What I'm saying is-
let's not get into an adversarial.
No, I didn't mean it at all adversarial. No, I didn't mean it adversarial.
Okay, because Mark, obviously, every step along the way,
I'm just saying, you know what,
it's been done
he makes sense.
rationally.
He makes
by your
sense.
board with your leadership.
He makes-
But we have a 170-page document which suggests that we, without pointing fingers at anybody, says we need to do some things
No,
differently going
and I
forward.
agree. And what I'm trying to say is the planning board works and it's our little vacuum.
Yeah.
We have all our
Yeah.
little bylaws and everything else. You need somebody from outside of that. And maybe it does make sense to have this board hire somebody to look at our zoning and to see, as we move forward, what needs to be done.
Right, and
I agree.
If you're on board with that, because
I
we're not
think-
going to get anywhere without you and
I
the planning
think
board's
that makes more-
participation.
I think that makes more sense, because we're okay with where we're at. We need somebody to tell us, okay, this is what the future's gonna be, this is how we're gonna change it, this.
That might be the best solution, as long as we don't get fighting, as
Oh, I
long
don't
as we're
think we
working
are.
together.
As long as
Yeah.
when we produce it,
Yeah.
it's accepted as being sound.
Right.
Not questioning
Mark,
why.
one of the
I have to
one of
put
the
that back.
reasons that someone on the planning board was asked to serve in this committee is
I
precisely
thought for
this
that.
point. And one of the reasons I'm, as chairman, glad to see you here, is because without you being here, the notion of us hiring a consultant to do this kind of work, because you are the carrier of the good news in both directions.
I don't know if it's good news, but.
Yeah, no, you are. You are it.
You know what, it makes sense, if you guys wanna look at where we're at and where we're going in the future, you guys start it.
And
Us guys, you're
Us
on
guys,
this board
no.
too, you're on this board too.
The board does it,
Yeah.
I think it makes.
You're part of us,
You don't wanna
guys.
weigh in with that one?
I'm-
She's part of both, too.
Yes. I have the same amount of work either way, I'm good.
Right.
So, from a diagnostic standpoint, we get somebody out there to take a look at it and see where we're strong and where our zoning is weak.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Okay.
And,
We
you
can
know,
highlight
and
the first 9 points
unidentified
of that
other
anyway.
issues that may pop up too
Okay.
later on,
Right.
but down the road. But-
Okay, wonderful.
All right.
Okay.
You know what, that's actually, I think, a huge step forward, because I appreciate you saying that, because that shows buy-in from the planning
Well,
board.
no, what I thought
And-
about it
and,
was,
yeah.
I didn't want to get into the point, I didn't want it to be adversarial, so when I took a step back from it, it makes more sense, rather than have the planning board do it and bring it to you and force it upon you. Since you're the one asking the question, you guys bring it to us
Yep.
and
Yep.
reaffirm what we
Yep.
have and say, okay, this, we're the first ones to tell you, our over 55 bylaw didn't work. We tried it,
Yep.
different developers came and told us it didn't work. We were trying to be proactive about it. This is another step at being proactive
And, you
about
know, in having the second set of eyes, I mean, I'll admit to a similar bias on the selectmen side. We always end up using the same architect and engineers, all these, there's a comfort level. They figured us out, we figured them out, and it kind of works. But you know what? At times, it's good to have a third set of eyes saying, okay, you guys have a love, bromance going on, but that, it's
We're
nice
going back
have
to
a-
stuff Phil Russell did in the 50s, you know?
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Well,
Okay, good.
Thank you,
I'm
Mark,
in-
for the suggestion.
I'm
I
in terrific
appreciate it.
agreement with Mark.
okay. So I'm going to ask, because I now want to work with Mark and others here to go, basically to raise the funds, as we're there, request the funds to begin the process of putting together an RFP and all the rest, to get us a consultant to do the diagnostic, as it were, from this broad perspective and mandate, okay?
Well, again, we should get on the agenda with the finance committee, and all of us should be invited, but I'll definitely go with you, because those folks are, and we should, they always appreciate if you give them a little memo in advance, tell them what we're asking, if it's not
Can I bring up one more thing, since I'm
of
riding the
course.
wave?
Yeah, right.
Okay, wait.
How
Yes,
about-
Yes.
Meeting once a month. I know we're starting out early and everything else, but I know you've probably got a ton of things going. We're meeting two times a month now. It's hard to try to make every other week.
Okay.
Maybe until,
Phil.
maybe, I don't know, until we get closer to the fall or something, especially the summer, July and August.
Okay, so
Maybe-
you want to basically
Well, I don't know,
cut
I'm just
back.
throwing that out there. It's-
All right, all right.
Throw another comment.
Riding the
I'm with Mark, as long as we schedule these other, if we're gonna get back before the planning board, the selectmen, and the finance committee, and we do all that, and only meet once more in, whatever it is, August, then that's a pretty good scope of accomplishment between now
Okay.
and Labor Day.
No, I'm good with
How's
that.
I mean,
Well, I was going to bring up that the meeting on August 8th, I'm out of town, so I
That's
don't.
the one we skipped.
As am I.
As of,
Okay, there you go.
It's hard
So
to,
as long as we
it's
have a
hard to try to
quorum.
schedule two.
Yeah, all right, that worked.
Okay, so do we pick another date?
Yeah, we already had a second one, right? Didn't we have a
Well, we
second
have
August?
2
we
weeks
have
from
one 2
today.
weeks from now, which is still July.
Okay, well, make that
You want to
Are
move
you
that?
away then? Yeah.
What, 2 weeks, what's that? That's the,
20
around for the 20th. 25th?
Yes, that's the
Yes.
25th.
So you would like to move it to August sometime?
Do you want to skip one? No, you can't skip one in
Well,
August.
between now and August, what we could probably get done is meeting with, you planning board got another meeting?
We have a meeting on the 20th.
Okay.
So 13th and the 20th.
Planning board, I warned the selectmen last night that we were gonna be looking to get on their agenda, so they know it's coming. Selectmen, planning board, finance committee, and then meet again sometime in August after everybody's back. Sounds like the 8th doesn't work for everybody else.
Right. Well, remember, I think probably the most critical thing is making sure that we have enough meeting time set up so that if there are any dollars that we have to go and make the request to.
Yeah, but we can put that in now. I mean,
Yeah, I personally, just my opinion, and, I raised the subject, I don't think there's any need now to go in with specific dollars. I think it would be seen as very prudent on our part to go in before we know what the dollars are and say, dollars are coming, and here's where we expect them, in these areas. We don't know what they cost yet, in the finance committee, and we're gonna request the help from the finance team to do that, believe me.
so we can keep a spot.
Yeah, we keep a spot, we get on their radar, we can request their help, I mean, we have some estimates, I know that in the master plan, but I mean, honestly, I think the reality numbers in those are 10 times whatever that
Yes, yes,
amount
yes,
is.
yeah.
Those are consulting dollars, not construction dollars.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and.
So we can make those placeholder requests.
The dialogue is the most important thing to establish, just so that the finance committee aren't saying, oh, we got this master plan committee walking around, talking about spending tons of money, and they haven't given any thought to the cost. Earlier on, come in and say, we're very aware there's gonna be cost, and it's gonna be over 10 years, and it's gonna, whatever period of time it is, and we wanna work with you on developing a plan for addressing those. And that's my suggestion. And I don't think we need to have a level of detail, frankly, more than either what's in this document, and then what we've narrowed down as our initial goals to do.
And when is the next FinCom meeting?
2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from tonight, okay.
That's why we're up here in 2 weeks.
Yes, that's why I saw it.
We got booted, but we're on cable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Apparently we
Lucky
outranked
us.
them somehow.
So definitely we're going to make a presentation, shall we say,
I'm just suggesting.
a discussion, engage with the FinCom on their next meeting. I think probably should be the time.
And the next selectment meeting is the night before, correct,
Okay.
Maren? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on a 2-week schedule, and you guys are on the 20th?
We're on the 13th and the 20th.
Okay. So however, those next 3 meetings, why don't we just get on all those agendas, and whoever can make it can show up and give the updates. Here's where we're at, this is what we decided on our goals, and here's, just so everybody knows.
Well, I'll definitely be there, and I'll be very happy to make the presentation, but I think that, I'm hoping
Yeah.
that whatever it gets, as it were, offered up, that all of us join in, shall we say, preparing the document. I can do the first draft.
Circulate it,
I mean,
sure.
and then I can do a first draft, or somebody else wants to give a whack at it, that's fine. I'm not, I want to get it done effectively. Pride of authorship is not, to me.
I've been pretty mouthy, so I'd just as soon have someone else do it.
Of course.
So you're talking about just summarizing the points from tonight as to what, and putting it out there?
Yeah, making a verbal presentation, with as few slides as possible. This is where we are, this is what we anticipate.
And this is what we're gonna need,
Yeah,
and we
right.
want your buy-in on points X, Y, and Z. Yep.
I have a couple things. You're the chair, you can do it. You don't need us to weigh in and chime on it. I also question whether or not it would be a violation of the open meeting law for us to, via email, debate a document.
He would send it to me, and I'd send it out for comments, and if I get more
It's
than
a
a
commentary
quorum,
thing.
then I pick and choose.
I personally feel like, I appreciate you making the offer. You're the chair, you do it. You have, by virtue of being the chair, you have some significant amount, not an insignificant amount of latitude to represent us. And you don't need us to rubber stamp you every time you're gonna go out the door.
I'm not looking for rubber stamp. I want to make sure.
No, I don't mean
that
rubber
we
stamp.
feel-
You don't need us telling you
Okay.
you're right.
Okay,
Be
fair
right,
enough.
just be right.
Okay.
I agree
We'll
with
tell you
Mike-
if you're
I
wrong.
agree with Mike on that on both points, the legalistic and
Okay.
the confidence
In terms of
point.
it will get bogged down, it'll take too long.
Okay.
But
You do
do please share it with us, because if there's
Yes.
something alarmingly,
Yes.
alarmingly wrong, then we
That's-
can call an emergency meeting to depose you and change everything, all right?
But no,
I'm trying to
Paul's being
avoid the
facetious.
disposal unit, that's all.
But we should see it, we need to see it ahead of time so that
Yes,
we're
yes,
prepared
yes.
to be able to
Absolutely,
support
yes.
you when you are having the
Okay.
dialogue.
Fair
And,
enough.
Myron, you can check to see that we can get on all those agendas. Yeah.
So you can put them on us all.
But to Mark's point, it's something to consider. We may be more effective meeting less frequently as a group and meeting more frequently as small teams interacting with particular boards, and we don't have to make a decision about that.
Right.
But we may want to think about that.
Implementation's in our title, so that's, let's not lose sight of that. It's not debate society.
Right.
And there comes a time and place for doing just that, and we may be coming to it soon.
Right.
Good. Later.
Yeah, maybe for the first few meetings, we'll
Yeah.
want to meet
Right.
more, and then I think
agree.
Mike's point is,
agree.
And
as
have
well
meetings
taken
to commiserate
afterwards, I think,
bury the bodies. yes.
Ramp up and.
works a lot, makes a lot of sense.
Say bury the body on camera, okay, you live with that comment.
That's all right. It's going to be my body anyway.
Mr. Chairman?
Now you're making a proposal then on the calendar then. We split the difference between the next two meetings and we do one on August 1st. Is there availability on August 1st? Is it 3 weeks from now?
Anyone?
I have no idea offhand, sounds fine to me.
Sounds fine to me right now.
All those other board meetings will be done by then, right? So we could,
Yeah, we could
yeah,
then-
okay, that'd be good.
Because if we don't, then it's probably gonna be 5 weeks before you meet,
Yep,
because
yep.
everybody else is up the following week.
All right.
So that's Tuesday, August
Tuesday, 3 weeks
9.
from today.
No, not 2 weeks.
3 weeks from today.
3 weeks.
All right, where are we?
So we're gonna meet on Tuesdays if at all possible. Is that how we're gonna keep it?
Is there a conflict with any other group that night? Laura?
Yeah, it'll be always Finance Committee or Board of Health, or, it always depends.
But none of those
You
members
can't-
are our members.
Right, right. You can't
I'd
find
rather.
a night when somebody doesn't meet.
Yeah,
I can do August
I
1st.
agree.
What is it, August
August 1?
1?
And we know what the homework is for next meeting. Okay, so we got that. Public input?
Yeah, we have the public here, Carolyn.
Yep, I'm looking
I
up.
had my question.
Okay. All right. Has everyone had a chance yet to look at the last meeting minutes?
I did.
Yes, I do.
Any corrections, please?
I wasn't here.
Who's our clerk? I forgot.
I am. I wasn't here.
Oh, all right. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Is that my job to do?
Aye.
Yeah,
Okay.
going forward, that's your
Okay,
role.
all right, that's-
Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good meeting, Mr.